Hi, I'm Marjo Anderson. I'm the pastor at Salem Lutheran Church in Bridgeport, Connecticut in the United States. Today is May 30th, and it's a special day in my life. I don't know what you believe about baptism or being baptized by the Holy Spirit, but I believe that there are different ways to look at it. And the way I like to look at it is that the breath that I breathe is the breath, the spirit, the ruach in Hebrew, the pneuma in Greek, of the living God. Breath, wind, spirit. And so when I was born, from the very first breath, God's Spirit resided in me. Not fully, but as untapped potential, as a receptacle, just waiting to make contact. And then when I was almost 2 months, I was baptized with water, with a sprinkling of water. And since that time, the Spirit has touched my life again and again and again. And it continues to touch me each day in some very small ways and in some hugely dramatic, life-changing ways. I'm not going to talk about all of those today, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about how the Spirit has worked in my life to celebrate this day, which is the anniversary of my first baptism with the Spirit. The Gospel for Trinity Sunday, from John chapter 3, verses 1 to 8. A certain Pharisee named Nicodemus, a member of the Sanhedrin, came to Jesus at night. "Rabbi," he said, "we know you're a teacher come from God, for no one can perform the signs and wonders you do unless by the power of God." Jesus gave Nicodemus this answer: "The truth of the matter is, unless one is born anew, one cannot see the dominion of God." Nicodemus said, "How can an adult be born a second time? I can't go back into my mother's womb to be born again." Jesus replied, "The truth of the matter is, no one can enter the dominion of God without being born of water and the Spirit. What is born of the flesh is flesh, and what is born of the Spirit is spirit. So don't be surprised when I tell you that you must be born anew. The wind blows where it will. You hear the sound it makes, but you don't know where it comes from or where it goes. So it is with everyone who is born of the Spirit." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. She was riding high on the wind of the Spirit. On that day after Easter, she had glimpsed the risen Christ and she had come back to faith. She'd done great work as an intern over this past year and a half, restructuring their Sunday school, starting a vacation Bible school, with her husband developing an impressive youth ministry program, starting a young adults group, and all of that in addition to her worship and music and pastoral care responsibilities. And now that she actually believed in God again, she loved her work even more. Yes, she was riding high on the wind of the Spirit. And so were all of the children and youth and young adults and parents who were working with her. So it came as a complete shock when later that month, at council meeting, the pastor said, Finance Committee has decided that in order to solve the budget shortfall, we need to terminate the internship position. She wasn't the only one in shock. Everyone had been taken aback. When the vote was taken, the pastor voted for terminating the position, and everyone else voted against that motion. They said to the pastor, go back to Finance Committee and tell them to come back with an alternative solution. So in May, they came back. And the pastor again said to council, the Finance Committee says there is no other option. We must terminate the internship position. This time, the motion was defeated 7-5, and it was decided to discuss the matter again in June. But she had a problem with the June meeting. She was scheduled to travel back to her home state to attend her synod convention where she would be approved for ordination. Now, she could leave right after that and get back in time for the council meeting, but then she wouldn't get to spend any time with her parents. She hadn't seen them in over a year. It was a 10-hour drive, and she didn't have the money or the time to make another trip. She prayed, and she felt the Spirit whisper in her ear, go, go, leave the meeting in God's hands. And so she went. It was a Spirit-filled convention. The theme was Born Anew, based on the text in John about Nicodemus, the one we just read. There were banners all over the place that said Born Anew. There were balloons. When you entered, you were given a pin of a squiggly little caterpillar. It was a rolled up pipe cleaner with googly eyes and little antennae, a symbol of new life. They had just had balloons with butterflies for Easter, and here again was the symbol of the caterpillar turning into a butterfly, a kind of resurrection, being born anew. There was even a theme song with new lyrics that someone had written, born anew, da 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 da, set to a familiar tune. There was so much excitement and enthusiasm in the place. It was palpable. You could just feel the Spirit's presence. And then at the convention, she was approved for ordination. And again, she was riding high on the wind of the Spirit, knowing it was carrying her further down the path that God had laid out for her. On the hour drive back to her parents' house, the Spirit blew into her ear a new song. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Be still and know that I am God. She wasn't writing the song. It was just coming to her. A second verse came. God gave the Son for us in love. God gave the Son for us in love. Dying upon the tree, Christ rose to set us free. God gave the Son for us in love. Obviously, the song was about the Trinity. The first verse from the Old Testament was about God the Father. The first 2 was about the Son. So verse 3, she guessed, would be about the Spirit. She began hearing the words, "Make me a channel of your grace." Wait, that verse should be about the Spirit. She tried to write different words, but the words coming into her mind were insistent. Make me a channel of your grace. Pour your love into me and let it flow through me. Make me a channel of your grace. Never before had a song been downloaded into her. What an extraordinary gift. Again, she was riding high on the wind of the Spirit. The next night was the council meeting that she would not be attending. And fear gripped her and started dragging her down. She decided she would pray throughout the meeting until someone called her with the results. She went into the little bathroom in her parents' house, locked the door, sat on the floor, huddled in the corner, like she used to do when she was a child, and she prayed. She prayed first that she could keep her job. She needed her job. Her husband had lost his last clients. Their tenants, both sets on they had a 3-family house, and both sets of tenants had moved out. That's what paid their mortgage. She needed that job. And so she was praying to God that she could keep it. But as she kept praying, the prayer didn't feel right. And finally, she felt that she needed to pray a different prayer. And she just prayed, "May God's will be done. May your will be done, God. May your will be done. May your will be done." She prayed it over and over and over again. May your will be done. She kept praying and praying, waiting for the phone to ring. But it didn't ring that night. Nor did it ring the next day, or the next, or the next. Finally, it was time for her to make that long drive home. When she got there, there was no message. No one had called. The next day was Saturday, and she wasn't sure if she had a job to return to. Should she show up for work or not? What if she showed up and was told she didn't have a job and wasn't wanted? Finally, she called a friend on council, the same friend in whom she had glimpsed the risen Christ. And he said, "No one called you? No one called you? I can't believe no one called you. I'm so sorry. And I'm even sorrier to tell you that they voted to terminate your job in 2 weeks." She muttered something and got off the phone as quick as she could because she did not want him to hear her sob. The next morning, as she drove to church, she was so hurt and so filled with anxiety and fear and resentment and anger, but mostly just hurt. How could she go and face those people? She couldn't. She just couldn't. And so she cried out to God and she said, "God, I can't do this. I can't do this on my own. Help me." Immediately, she was filled with a peace like she'd never known before. A peace so vast and so deep and so wide. It was like a perfectly still lake. And after the peace, understanding and empathy and love and grace poured into her, flooding every cell of her being. And when she walked into that church, she felt as if she were pure grace, grace personified. And again, she was riding high on the wind of the Spirit. At our pastor's text study this week, Pastor Beth asked, "What do you think? Can you be baptized by water and the Spirit more than once?" Pastor Mark replied, "Well, Luther said, remember your baptism daily." But the trouble with that is that for most of us in the Lutheran tradition, we can't actually remember our baptism because we were baptized as infants. We can remember that we were baptized. Well, we can remember that we were told we were baptized, but we cannot remember our actual baptism. And yet, the word remember in Greek is anamnesis, which means to relive something over and over and over again, as if it were actually happening in the present moment. So when Jewish people celebrate the Passover, they're not simply remembering an historical event, the Exodus, but they're believing that God is setting them free, leading them out of slavery to freedom right now in their own lives, in the present moment. When Christians celebrate communion, we're not just remembering the historical event of the Last Supper, but we are believing that Jesus is right with us here and now, sharing his body and blood with us. That story I told about the intern was my story. I can prove it. I still have the little caterpillar. I don't know if you can see it there. The little curly cute caterpillar. It was such a momentous event. I've kept it all these years. I thought I knew where it was this week, and I went to look for it and it wasn't there. And I thought, I kept it all of these years, and now when I need it, I can't find it. And then my arm brushed the table next to me, and I knocked some papers on the floor, and when I went to bend over to get them, there it was. Well, throughout that story, I was baptized by the Spirit again and again and again, in glimpsing the risen Christ, in being led to put the outcome of the council meeting in God's hands, in the born anew theme of the Synod Convention, in my approval for ordination, in the gift of the song, in the gifts of peace and grace that God poured into me so that I could walk into that church. And finally, once again, nearly 40 years later, because as I was recalling that story this week, I realized for the very first time why the Spirit had given me those very words. The words in that song were nothing to do with my approval for ordination. They were nothing to do with the born anew theme. But God said those words to me in that song. And then God did exactly what God had said. Be still and know that I am God. Peace, peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. God gave me a peace that passed all human understanding that day. Dying upon the tree, Christ rose to set us free. God set me free that day from my fear and my anger and my hurt. Make me a channel of your grace. Pour your love into me and let it flow through me. God poured love and grace into me that morning. I didn't want to leave that church. I didn't want to leave that job. I needed that job. I loved that job. I was comfortable with the way things were. But God's Spirit called me out of what was comfortable and familiar and safe into the great unknown. It wasn't easy. It wasn't pleasant. It was certainly nothing I would have chosen to do. But the Spirit blows where it will. And if we want to ride on the wind of the Spirit, we have to let go of the past. We have to let go of the old, the familiar, the beloved, the cherished, the treasured. And we need to leap and dance into the unknown. Or maybe just step hesitatingly, or maybe even crawl. But the Spirit cannot be constrained or contained or confined to particular songs or hymns or liturgies. The Spirit cannot be bound to rituals or routines or habits. The Spirit does not live in the past. We cannot go back and expect to find the Spirit there. And the Spirit does not even stay still in the present. The Spirit is constantly blowing, moving, sweeping us out of our comfortable, familiar, predictable, safe places, leaving us grieving, leaving us hurting, leaving us angry, leaving us lost and alone, in order to take us to that place of abundant joy. You can't have it any other way. We can't stay still and expect the Spirit to stay with us, because the Spirit blows where it will. Oh, we can stand our ground, we can nail the church down, but the Spirit will simply blow over us or around us or between us or past us. We can ignore it and hope it goes away without causing too much damage. Or we can be born anew. If we want life, if we want abundance, if we want joy, we cannot stand still. We cannot keep doing things the same way. We cannot go back to the way we used to do them. If we want life, we can chase the wind. We can dance with the Lord, and we can ride on the wind of the Spirit of the living God. May the triune God, the three in one, the one in three, the creator, the redeemer, the sustainer, the life giver, the pain bearer, the love maker, the God of water, wind, and flame. May that God move through our bodies, light up our minds, burn in our hearts, and dance in our spirits. Amen and amen.